Sir John Hawkins, British admiral, was born at Plymouth in 1532 and belonged to a family of Devonshire shipowners and skippers. Occupations then more closely connected than is now, his father, William Hawkins, was a prosperous freeman of Plymouth, who thrice represented that town in Parliament, and is described by Richard Hyatt as one of the principal sea captains in the west parts of England. His elder brother, also called William, was closely associated with him in the Spanish expeditions, and took an active part in fitting out ships to meet the Armada. And his nephew, the eldest son of the last named of the same name, sailed with Sir Francis Drake to the South Sea in 1577, and served as a lieutenant under Edward Fenton in the expedition, which started the East Indies and China in 1582. His son, Richard Hawkins, was also a British admiral and explorer. John Hawkins' first voyages were from 1555 to 1563. They formed a syndicate of wealthy merchants to invest in trade, including that of slaves. In 1555, he set sail with 3 ships for the Caribbean via Sierra Leone. They hijacked a Portuguese slave ship and traded the 301 slaves in the Caribbean. Despite having 2 ships seized by the Spanish authorities, he sold the slaves in Santo Domingo and thus demented the profit made by his London investors. His voyages caused the Spanish to ban all English ships from trading to the West India colonies. On his second voyage, Queen Elizabeth partnered with him by renting him the old, huge 700-ton ship, Jesus of Lubeck, on which he set forth on a more extensive voyage, along with 3 small ships. Hawkins sailed to Barbuda and Venezuelan coast, pirateering along the way. By the time he had reached there, he had captured around 400 Africans. Diego Ruiz de Vallejo, public accountant, allowed him to trade slaves on the condition that he pay only 7.5% of the tax. Alonso Banderas, the governor, submitted a report in which it was recorded as a legitimate transaction. After Hawkins routed all Venezuelan ports and Rio de la Hacha, yielding advantageous returns, he was awarded with a certificate of good behavior. A commercial license was extended to him on May 21, 1565, by Honorable Sirs Rodrigo Casa, city regular mayor, Hernando Castilla, Miguel de Castellanos, treasurers, Larzo de Vallejo Adultre, quartermaster, Balestar de Castellanos, and Domingo Felix, alderman. During the same year, audiences of Santo Domingo entailed that investigations leading to know about the irregular activities performed by Rio de la Hacha senior officials who were involved in the deal with Sir John Hawkins. Castellanos, the treasurer, was accused of having fraudulent deal regarding to the slave trade. It was the 3rd time the English filibusters roamed about the area, accomplishing large commercial operations, among which the slave trade was significant. The fact was not overlooked by Santo Domingo audience and civil servants. In connection to his visits to Venezuelan ports, in the year 65, recorded was 1567. There was such a coaster named Juan de Aguinas, Englishman, with enough gods and 300 to 400 slaves, product of his raids of Guinea territory. In the province of Venezuela, quite few slaves and merchandise were rescued from his Englishmen, and others such as Frenchmen and Portuguese, who were accustomed to this kind of activities. After Barbuda, Hawkins sailed to Rio de la Hacha. The officials tried to prevent Hawkins from selling the slaves by imposing taxes. Captain Hawkins refused to pay the taxes and threatened to burn down the towns. After selling his slaves, Captain Hawkins sailed to the French colony in Florida for a respite. Captain Hawkins returned to England in September 1566, his expedition a total success as his financiaries made a 60% profit. His 3rd voyage began in 1567. Hawkins obtained many more slaves and also augmented his cargo by capturing the Portuguese slave ship Madre de Deus, Mother of the God, and its human cargo. He took about 400 slaves across the Atlantic on the 3rd trip to merchandise in Dominica, Morteria Island, and Barbuda, at San Juan de Ula, in modern Veracruz. He was chanced upon the strong Spanish force that was bringing the royal etiquette issued on June 16, 1567, In the ensuing Battle of San Juan de Ula, only 2 of the English ships escaped the destruction, and Hawkins' voyage home was miserable. That of Hawkins' gunner, Job Hartop, was equally so, and took so many years. Although his first 3 voyages were semi-practical enterprises, Queen Elizabeth was in need of money and saw pirates as fighting her battles at her own cost and risk. Hawkins would write about the details of his 3rd voyage and an alliance to raid for slaves.